Would really like to know what Freddy Gaudreau's plan was on that final shootout attempt, because that's a hard spot to try to score a goal from. The Wild rally to tie in regulation, but ultimately fall 3-2 in a shootout to the St. Louis Blues. We'll break down all the action, including Marco Rossi's goal. We'll talk about Kirill Kaprizov getting the game-tying goal. Another solid game for Marc-Andre Fleury. Lots to like, but a few things to still pick apart in tonight's Locked On Wild postcast. Let's get things started. The doctor will see you now.
You are Locked On Wild postcast, part of Locked On Minnesota on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
The Minnesota Wild fall 3-2 in a shootout to the St. Louis Blues here tonight, and our Locked On Wild postcast is officially underway, and I gotta start by asking Freddy Gaudreau what his overall plan was on that shootout attempt, rolling to the right and just try to deke, a second deke, a third deke, a fourth deke. Just not great, but ultimately the Wild do get a point, and they're able to get a point out of this one, but ultimately similar things that have happened all season have continued to rear their ugly heads. Get this. The Minnesota Wild's record against the Central Division this season, 3-10-2. They've been outscored 54-30 in those games. And it's like, it's the same thing. And it's not even necessarily that that second period wasn't great. It's about letting the other team kind of set the pace. If the Wilds come in and they really put the pressure on the St. Louis Blues to start this game, I think you avoid overtime entirely. But the Wilds kind of sat back, let the Blues be the one to dictate how things went on their home ice. And as a result, you go into the third period trailing 2-0. Yes, you did rally to tie, so credit there. Marco Rossi with a very, very nice move to sneak one past Jordan Binnington. And Kirill Kaprizov with the peekaboo goal to knock Binnington back on his heels. So credit there. But it feels like a game where if you get off to a better start, you probably get both points in regulation. But that's not unique to this game. That's something that has happened in all of these show me games. And just by and large, it was really a lot of kind of quiet play until the third period. Even a little way through, a few minutes into the second, I'll grant you. And the funny thing here, this might cause a problem. ESPN, oh dear. Well, let's go to a more reputable site, I guess, because ESPN has 0 minutes shown for anybody. So apparently nobody played. What we did get, Nashville, of course, has a 1-0 lead on Seattle. They're just never going to lose again. Let's look at the box score here. Face-off numbers for the Wild tonight were not great. And so that is okay, something weird is going on with this game, because NHL 2, their breakdown has nothing listed. I know Marc-Andre Fleury was 35 out of 37, but there are no shots on goal, no face-offs, penalty minutes. Ultimately, Ultimately, this game, though, was decided early. The Blues able to get the 2-0 lead. The Wild did rally to tie, but for a show me game, that's not a good enough start. Marco Rossi, after the game, saying that it's just not acceptable right now this time of year. We have to be ready for 60 minutes and not just to show up in the third period. He's right. If you can dictate the tempo a little bit more in the first period, and if you can even just hold serve in the second, it's probably a different result. And for this Wild team, you're 3 points behind the Vegas Golden Knights. But it feels like you really could have been 2. It feels like you could have got both points here tonight. But you can't have that type of a start in these types of games. So let's talk about the good. Marc-Andre Fleury was great in this game again. He was consistently the best player on the ice. He had a couple of phenomenal saves. He had the amazing left leg save to stop a 2-on-1 for the St. Louis Blues. He did his job in overtime. He did his job in regulation. A great feed from Jake Neighbors to Jordan Kyrou, leading to the first goal. I don't know what you do as a goalie for that, because Jordan Kyrou was able to just kind of walk up to the back of the net and slam that pass home. The second goal, yeah, that's one that your goalie probably should have, but Fleury was not the issue here tonight. Even in the shootout, he did his job. The Wilds just, again, were not able to get the we're just not able to get the game tying goal because Freddy Gaudreau decided to go for a walk. So it's frustrating because then I'm seeing in the comments here, and we'll talk about this in full. Is it feels like you've got better options on the roster that are just not getting playing time. And I'll go back to what I said in the live stream. It feels like some of the roster decisions are being handled by higher up than the head coach. Would also explain in part why we saw such a heavy disparity between the top line guys playing like 25 minutes apiece and the fourth line guys playing like 5 minutes. So we didn't really learn anything new here tonight. We saw an extension of the things that have gone wrong at points throughout the season. And as Dan is pointing out in the comments, face-off percentages were just atrocious. Ryan Hartman won 5 of 21 draws. Marco Rossi won 5 of 16. The Wild got torched in the face-off circle here tonight. And, that by itself doesn't lead to a loss. Like, there are ways to overcome not being great in the face-off circle, but it's just one of those things that add up as a game goes along and as you are looking for key opportunities to try to go and win a game. So that wasn't particularly great either. So yeah, it's one of those games where you did what you needed to do, but it feels like you could have done more. And there are players in the lineup that I feel like embody that pretty solidly. You did what you had to do, but it feels like you could be doing so much more. So that's kind of where we're at. I mean, the fact that the Wild were able to rally to tie with 4 minutes left to play in regulation and get a point out of this one. Keeps them in front of the Blues, gets them to within 3 points of the Vegas Golden Knights. But it also means then that you are going to need probably 3 out of 4 against the Ducks and the Kings. Probably 4 out of 4. But we'll talk about all that. We'll get your comments as well. Just getting things rolling here. So I just wanted to share my 2 cents, but we'll hop in and get your comments about tonight's game. So let me have them. Whatever you want to say about tonight's game, fire it up, and we will discuss on tonight's Locked On Wild postcast. More to come as the Minnesota Wild lose in a shootout 3-2. More on the way after this here on tonight's Locked On Wild postcast. Tonight's Locked On Wild postcast is brought to you by Robinhood. Did you know that even if you have a 401k for retirement, you can still have an IRA? Robinhood has the only IRA that gives you a 3% boost on every dollar you contribute when you subscribe to Robinhood Gold. But get this, now through April 30th, Robinhood is even boosting every single dollar you transfer in from other retirement accounts with a 3% match. That's right, no cap on the 3% match. Robinhood Gold gets you the most for your retirement thanks to their IRA with a 3% match. This offer is good through April 30th. Get started at Robinhood.com/boost. Subscription fees apply. And now for some legal info. Claim as of Q1 2024, validated by Radius Global Marketing Research. Investing involves risk, including loss. Limitations apply to IRAs and 401ks. 3% match requires Robinhood Gold for 1 year from the date of first 3% match. Must keep Robinhood IRA for 5 years. The 3% matching on transfers is subject to specific terms and conditions. Robinhood IRA available to U.S. customers in good standing. Robinhood Financial LLC member SIPC is a registered broker-dealer. Tonight's Locked On Wild postcast also brought to you by Ibotta. Grocery bills are getting so expensive these days, but now they don't have to be. Start getting cash back on your grocery shopping with the free Ibotta app and get cash back every time you shop. The average Ibotta user earns $256 per year. That could cover the cost of an entire shopping trip. So you can buy that flight you've been eyeing, that game you've been dying to go to, or the fancy dinner you've been craving. Join the over 50 million users and earn cash back every time you shop from over 2,700 brands and retailers, including Lowe's, Macy's, Sephora, Best Buy, and more. Right now, Ibotta is offering our listeners just $5 for trying Ibotta by using the code LOCKEDONNHL when you register. Just go to the App Store or Google Play Store and download the free Ibotta app to start earning cash back and use code LOCKEDONNHL. That's IBOTTA in the Google Play or App Store and use code LOCKEDONNHL. What's happening, everybody? Minnesota Wild fall in a shootout by a score of 3-2. They do pick up a point, but they're now 33, 27, and 8. So 33 and 35 for the layperson. And they get to within 3 points of the Vegas Golden Knights, but it feels like an instance in which they could have gotten both. Could have gotten both points. If you get off to a better start, if you can dictate the pace, as opposed to having St. Louis play lead on their home ice and then trying to match. Did not work out great in the second period. Wilds mostly held serve in the first, but second period, they definitely did not. I want to start with Dan here tonight. Vinny Lettieri and Jake Lucchini each have 1 point in their last 17 games. Both got assists in the Vancouver game. What does Adam Beckman need to do to get in the lineup? What are they giving that he's not? It's a great question because I really don't know. And I'll give Vinny Lettieri a little bit of the benefit of the doubt because I think his play, I think he's been good this year, for the most part. He hasn't scored a ton, but like Jake Lucchini was an Iowa guy. And it feels like you are lacking shoot first players quite a bit on this team. And by giving Adam Beckman an opportunity to just let it rip, clearly I am not smart about these types of things, because if it was a good decision, you'd think we would see it, right? But we just continue to not. We continue to just settle. There's a lot of settling in this lineup. There's a lot of players getting minutes that are not maybe explicitly hurting you, but they're not offering you really anything. There are two guys on offense that fit that bill. And if you put Lettieri and Lucchini in that category too, you're not gonna hurt my feelings, because it feels like you could get more from a rookie than you could from those guys. Vinny Lettieri played 9 shifts tonight. Jake Lucchini played 14. Mason Shaw played 10. That fourth line was barely used. Mason Shaw played 5.5 minutes in this game. It was the same thing that we said about the games in which John Merrill played 6 minutes. And I know John Merrill has been overall better over the last probably 2 months. But even tonight, he nearly batted a puck into the Wild net. He was staring right at Marc-Andre Fleury. Like, rookie's not going to make that play. It feels like you could be getting more at those spots, and the Wild just continue to put those players on the roster. Like, I just don't understand. I don't get it. Quadrum joining us tonight. Do give the Wild props for tying it up and playing solid in OT, but a lot of giveaways, which could be us being hyper aware of the importance of the win. It just felt like the Wild started slow, and then we're trying to get everything back all at once. It felt like all the passes they made were trying to force a breakaway. We're trying to force an odd man rush, as opposed to simply letting the flow of the game happen normally. And I feel like if you just take maybe a step back and try to move up the ice in a more natural manner, you probably find a way to sustain more consistent zone time and probably find a way to get this done in regulation. But as a result, you don't. And look, Ryan Hartman, 2 penalties tonight. Zach Bogosian had 2 penalties tonight. I'm going to throw the first penalty on Ryan Hartman out, because unless there's something that I blatantly missed, I don't know what I don't know why he got taken to the box for that first penalty. That second one, though, you can't do that. And the Blues scored on it. So there's one goal. And you know, the play, the Zach Bogosian roughing play where he went after Brendan Saad for trying to stick tap him between the legs. That's a composure thing too. Like, I would have lost my mind on that type of a play, but you gotta remember where you're at situationally. Like, you have to hold your composure to the point that you get, because the Wild did not have a single power play tonight. That would have been their only instance, and it was negated because of some retaliatory stuff. And I know I would have been perfectly fine if somebody would have taken Brendan Saad and just caved his face in. But in that instance, you got to put the team first. You got to get a power play in that situation. And they didn't. And the Blues scored on one of theirs. The Wild didn't get any. So back to Lucchini. Lucchini completely blew the assignment on the Blues power play goal, drifted off to the side and pulled everyone out of position. Did the same on Ryan O'Rourke's goal for Nashville. I'm confused as to why Lucchini is even out there on the penalty kill. Like, do we really not have better options? I mean, I don't know. And Marcus Johansson playing penalty kill tonight too. Like, I get it with Eriksson Ek out, that Freddy Gaudreau defensively with Marcus Foligno is probably as good as you're going to get. And Ryan Hartman played penalty kill, which I'm fine with. But Mason Shaw was one of your better penalty killers last season. How does he not warrant opportunities out there? How does he not warrant the 114 that Jake Lucchini played on the penalty kill? I don't get it. Like, there's so many decisions that this team makes that just seem counterintuitive to what they're trying to do. And just make it like they just run polar opposite to what we see at other points during the game, which is why I have gone so far as to suggest that these decisions are not being made by John Hynes, which sounds insane. It sounds crazy to suggest, but they just run so differently from what we see on a nightly basis. And that's, I guess, the only logical explanation that I can wrap my head around, is that these are being done to try to make players play themselves into being good again. Murat should center line too with Hartman and someone besides Mojo, like Beckman and one of the Cardio twins can sit a few games. If nothing else, message sense. Yeah, I agree here. We've been calling for this. We've been calling for this for like 30 games, and it just continues to happen. Marcus Johansson played 19 minutes, 51 seconds tonight, not a single shot on net. He's on pace this season. He's on pace for 33 points in 77 games. 11 goals, 22 assists. Like, what are we doing here? What are we doing in so many of these situations? Johansson now has 5 shots in the last 4 games. He had 10 shots the entire month of February. I don't get it. I don't get it, and I'm tired of questioning. I'm tired of questioning it and continuing to see the same thing play out over and over and over and over and over again. Vinny and Lucchini are to Hynes what Freddie was to Evason, it feels like. Just comfort guys. Like, I get the notion of having guys that you can depend on to not screw up, to not be responsible for a goal, but they're not giving you anything else in the lineup. Big game, big nothing. 15 shots on goal, 5 by the D-men in 2 periods. That's 9 shots on goal in 2 periods by Wild forwards. It's not enough. If you took a shot for every missed shot, you'd likely die. Like, I just would love to see PK 1 of Foligno, Gaudreau, Middleton, Bogosian. PK number 2 of Hartman, either Kuznetsov or Shaw, plus Faber and Brodin. Yeah, Mike's right. Eriksson Ek is the backbone of this team. And so I guess credit as well. That's credits to the Wild for gaining a point against a tough team without the key to all of this. The Wild will get crushed in the playoffs, just lose and get the better pick. There are a zero chance that they make any sort of a playoff run. Yeah, we've been saying this. We've been saying this. I don't even know how long. It's been months that we've been saying this. Giving Johansson, Gaudreau, etc. extra ice time so Guerin doesn't look as bad for giving them extensions. I think this is a large part of the equation, is that you have to justify those guys being good, and you can't by playing them. But here's the problem: is it looks worse by continuing to give them large chunks of ice time. It's just all about hasty decisions with this team. Maybe it's Hines making those decisions, but maybe it's Billy G who hasn't given him much to work with. And your roster is limited by the $14 million in dead cap. But at the same time, it just feels like you're settling. It just feels like you're settling in this spot and just trying to put players in these positions that aren't going to make catastrophic mistakes, but they don't give you any upside whatsoever. They don't give you any offensive upside. They don't give you congratulations. Marcus Johansson's a fast skater. He doesn't shoot the puck. He has 16 shots total in his last 15 games. What do you think would happen in the playoffs? They would swarm 97, all they need to do. We saw this last year. Ryan Suter took Kirill Kaprizov out of the picture, and nobody else stepped up to fill the void. It's been there. Like, it's been there in plain sight. It's just Minnesota sports teams need to learn how to lose when they don't have a chance and play for the future. Well, that has to go to the owner, because the owner is the one that wants to have making the postseason be the goal, as if that's some sort of badge of honor, if that's some sort of high distinguishing achievement, as if you get a Nobel Peace Prize for making the postseason. And you don't. Half the league makes the playoffs. It's not a distinguishing award. You don't hang banners for making the postseason. You know what you hang banners for? Winning championships. Or maybe you hang a banner for being the Western Conference finalist if you're desperate. You don't hang banners for making the postseason. There's not a single banner at the XL Energy Center that says made the playoffs, because you don't hang them, because by and large other teams don't really care about that. Colorado Avalanche, when they make the postseason, they say that's great, but we have higher aspirations. Tampa Bay Lightning, hey, how do you guys feel about making the postseason? Weird question. We're going to go win a Stanley Cup. Vegas Golden Knights, like, this was our minimum goal for the season. We have higher aspirations than this. That's why last year Bill Guerin did not say that it was a failed season, because that's the goal. The goal is to make the postseason. The goal is to get to the playoffs. The goal is to get 3 more games at the XL Energy Center. That's what you're shooting for. That's what you're striving for. Should be striving for a Stanley Cup. You should be trying to hoist one here in the state of hockey. But instead, we're fighting tooth and nail to the end to try to get in as the 8th seed. And And it's just like, what's your payoff? What's your payoff for that? What's your payoff if you get to the postseason and you lose in the first round? Pat on the back? Congratulations for not being eliminated as quickly as some of the other teams were. Jonas Brodin has 2 more shots on goal this season than Marcus Johansson. He's a defenseman and he's played 14 fewer games. This is a great point too. Like, there's so much risk-averse play. You're playing not to lose as opposed to playing to win. I don't know. We'll make it past the first round after we can at least beat the Avs, Jets, and Stars at least twice in the season. Yeah, guess what your record against those teams is this year? Brett Marshall of Sound the Foghorn tallied it up as such. The Wild have not won a single game against Dallas, Colorado, or Winnipeg this season. They've beaten the Predators twice and the Blues once. It's because you're not a serious, like, you're not a legit postseason. You're not a legit playoff team. You're trying to take advantage of the fact that the bottom part of the Western Conference is sus. That's what you're doing. You're trying to take advantage of an opportunity that if you are playing, like, let's just play this out for devil's advocate. If we were in the Eastern Conference, we would be basically in the same spot we're in now. So that's a moot point. But I don't know. Like, if you do get that second wild card, are you really, like, you might get a game against Vancouver. You might make them sweat it a little bit, but we have to acknowledge, too, that the Wild have seen Casey DeSmith every game against Vancouver this year. They have not seen Thatcher Demko yet. Vancouver has said, our backup goalie is probably going to be enough, so we're just going to throw Casey DeSmith out there against the Wild and hope that it's enough. You would have, amongst the playoff contenders, if the Wild were to somehow get past Vegas, you have given up the most goals amongst Western Conference teams at 219. There are 4 teams that have not given up 200 goals yet. And Dallas, Colorado have scored over 250. The whole thing here, too, is that if Guerin just started the season saying, look, we're in uncharted waters for the next 2 years, we will weather the storms and keep the cabinets full. It's... Folks, the New York Rangers did this. The New York Rangers, let me pull it up here because I want to read it. This was back in 2018. The New York Rangers released a letter to their fans this week, signed by President Glenn Sather and General Manager Jeff Gorton. The letter announced in so many words that the team is rebuilding. The release of a letter like this is an unusual move. However, it is one that should be repeated by other general managers in other sports. While some may see this as a mere public relations move designed to soften the blow of significant future roster changes, it is more than that. By releasing the letter now and seeking to inform the broader community from the outset, the Rangers treated their fans like adults this week. It should be lauded. Here's the letter. As a member of the Blue Shirt Faithful, we consider you a part of the New York Rangers family and always want to ensure we share important news about the organization directly with you. Today, we want to talk to you about the future. As you know, since the 2005-2006 season, we have been a highly competitive team. We've played in 129 playoff games, won the President's Trophy, reached the conference finals 3 times, as well as the Stanley Cup final. While we're proud of all these accomplishments, again, listen to that list. Since 2005-2006, we have played in 129 playoff games, won the President's Trophy, reached the conference final 3 times, as well as the Stanley Cup final. While we're proud of all these accomplishments, we didn't reach our ultimate goal of bringing the Stanley Cup back to New York. So as we do every season, we have been continuously evaluating our team, looking for areas that can be improved to enhance our chances of winning. We began the process of reshaping our team this past summer when we traded for assets that we believe will help us in the years to come. As we approach the trade deadline later this month and into the summer, we will be focused on adding young competitive players that combine speed, skill, and character. This may mean we lose some familiar faces, guys we all care about and respect. While this is part of the game, it's never easy. Our promise to you is that our plans will be guided by our singular commitments, ensuring we are building the foundation for our next Stanley Cup contender. There are no fans like Ranger fans. You are passionate, loyal, and true. You fill the Garden every night, and we always know there will be a strong showing from Rangerstown in every building across the league. We do not take your support for granted. We appreciate that you have always stood by us, and we ask you to remain by our side as we undertake this exciting new chapter with promise and change. We will keep you informed as this process takes shape. Thank you for the incredible loyalty, pride, and respect you show to the New York Rangers each and every day. The New York Rangers sent that letter to their fans. They sent that letter to their fans. They mailed it out to a bunch of people. I think this season, even with losing out on making the postseason, would have been more interesting to watch if they brought up guys like O'Rourke, Walker, Patan, Hunt, Beckman, and others. Brian keeping us informed about the Predators-Kraken game. Seattle tied it up at 1-1 early in the third. If Leopold and Guerin are both in win it at all costs mode, we'll never get there. We have to raise the bar higher. And in order to raise the bar higher, you have to be willing to admit that the current formula that you have isn't working. And it's just not working. Like this group that has been locked in is capable of making the postseason, but they have not shown the ability to do anything beyond that because they don't make adjustments. They get routinely exploited by their opponent. Chess match stuff. And I know a lot of that was Dean, who didn't make a ton of adjustments. So maybe you'd have a better opportunity with John Hines at the helm. But again, it's a roster that is very limited. And it's a roster that has turned, and it's not even the skill side of things, folks. It's not even the skill side. It's a roster that has been synonymous with starting off slowly, getting frustrated. Those are common themes with this leadership group is that you get overwhelmed early on in games and you get frustrated by not being able to complete a 2-goal comeback in the last 60 seconds of a game, because that happened for one season. And I know losing to the point that you get a top 3 pick is that's not a surefire way to have success. Just ask Edmonton about that. But Colorado, Tampa Bay, there is something to be said about being willing to roll your sleeves up and sift through the mud to get yourself. Look at Chicago. Look at what Chicago's dealing with. You're telling me that they weren't willing to be bad to be rewarded with Connor Bedard? Gary Bettman's involvement in that aside, it may not be a surefire way to become a legitimate contender, but it absolutely helps. And guess what? The other part of this, we saw this on full display during the trade deadline, is the ability to be flexible at the trade deadline or beyond. Vegas did it again. Colorado did it again. Colorado reshaped their entire bottom 6 at the trade deadline. They shipped out Bowen Byram. How tough of a decision was that? And they went and they got themselves a number 2 center in Casey Middlestat because they had flexibility, because they lock in their key guys, they lock in their skill guys, they lock in their top 6 skill players that they really want to build around, and they are willing to cultivate the rest. You should build around guys like Kirill Kaprizov, like Matt Boldy, like Joel Eriksson-Ek, like Brock Faber. But you don't have any flexibility, and not even with the contracts, with the fact that you willingly gave trade protection. Willingly gave trade protection to these guys. So you can't do anything about that. Don't do this every time they lose, please. We're reacting to what we continue to see. Anytime we have one of these show me games, yes, I gave credit that they battled back. They tied it up, but it just squandered opportunities at the beginning of the game. That's really all it is. I'm not even honestly really, I'm not annoyed by this game per se. Like, it's more so just as much as we want to try to talk ourselves out of it. You've been given multiple opportunities against these teams that you're going to go up against in the postseason. And you're 3-10-2 in those games. If you were told no matter how badly you perform that you can't be fired from your job, that's how trade protection works. With the amount of sports and data piling and the ability to apply this data to the sport, it really confuses me as to why a lot of us can see this stuff, yet someone like Leopold doesn't. You got to be looking for it. You got to be looking for it to see it. This game is just another example of why they aren't on the same level of playoff teams. Frustration isn't with the game. It's with this team being spectacularly average. Too good to tank. Too bad to win a playoff series. The middle. You are right now 13th from the bottom in points, 74 points. You're technically one spot above the St. Louis Blues because they have a game in hand. That's what it is. Like that's where the issues lie here, is that I don't think anybody views this team as capable of going on a deep run. But that's why you play them. You don't know that until you get to the postseason and you go toe-to-toe against the team that you're playing. 3-10-4 against the Central Division this season. No wins against Colorado, Winnipeg, and Dallas. Like that's what we're saying here. Leopold is under no obligation to make this team compete for a title. It's a business. If the team is making money and he gets 2 extra home games for playoff revenue, he's good. He would not be the only owner to do this. Like, there are plenty of others. Just look at those receipts. We got another good example, one here in Minnesota that did that for a long time. Still kind of doing it. So the big takeaway here tonight is this. This didn't change anything for the Minnesota Wild tonight. They are still they're 3 points behind the Vegas Golden Knights. You've got a game coming up against the Anaheim Ducks on Tuesday and a game coming up against the Los Angeles Kings on Wednesday. That's still in front of you. And there's still a lot of the season left, but like, again, we're on about the 10th instance of this, I think, in which you have built up a little winning streak and then you get to a like prove it type game and it's a regulation loss. At least tonight it was an overtime. It was a shootout loss. So you got a point. So you went further than what has happened in the last several show me type games. But you started slow and you turned it over a bunch, which are squandered opportunities. This was a winnable game. It was right there. If you start off a little better with a little bit more urgency, you probably win it. And the tone of this is completely different. I can promise you that. I just call them how I see them. That's all we're doing here. Is just calling this like we see it. So I think with that, I'm going to call it a night. We will have a live episode for you tomorrow at noon. So make sure to join us then. But this has been a night full of streaming, and it's time for me to rest my voice. So thanks to everybody for tuning in here tonight. Make sure to hit the like button before you head out here for the evening. And we'll be back with you tomorrow to kind of recap this. We'll take your questions as well. Anything that you want to ask about the Minnesota Wild, make sure to join us at noon for tomorrow's live episode of Locked On Wild. Make sure to subscribe if you have not already so you don't miss out on any new episodes here throughout the week. We got you covered with new episodes every Monday through Friday. Thanks, everybody. And we'll catch you tomorrow for yet another episode of Locked On Wild. You can find all of our content here on YouTube and your favorite podcast platforms. So make sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on any new episodes here as part of the Locked On Podcast Network.